Who let the dogs out? Who did let the dogs out? Do you know who let the dogs out? Tell me, who do you think let the dogs out?
I blame Nat.
Nat, you let the dogs out, did you?
Me? I didn't even know any dogs.
Well, we can find someone who might know who let the dogs out by reading some lyrics and finding out about a person. So these poignant lyrics from the song Who Let the Dogs Out. The party was nice and the party was pumping, and everybody was having a ball. And tell them fellas to stop the name calling, and then them girls respond to the call. I hear a woman shout out, who let the dogs out? Woof woof, woof woof woof.
That speaks to me in the soul.
Poignant lyrics.
Hits hard.
Yes, poignant lyrics that are deep and meaningful. And they come from the brain of a man named Anselm Douglas. Anselm Douglas was a Trinidadian musician. He was born in the 1960s, and he wrote a song called Doggy. The year he wrote that song is a little bit ambiguous. I couldn't find out an exact date for it, but it was sometime before the Baha Men released theirs, which was 1999. So sometime before 1999, I think in the 80s would be my guess, because there's some other things that happened before the Baha Men as well. He wrote this song called Doggy. An interesting fact about this is that he may have stolen the chorus from a Canadian jingle writer.
As in the tune or the words?
So the tune.
Wow.
So the story, it might be apocryphal, was that he was recording some songs at a Canadian studio, and you'd hire out the studio space for a couple of hours, and before him was a jingle writer who was recording some of his jingles for radio. And Anselm was listening to this guy as he was recording before he went in, and liked the riff of Who Let the Dogs Out, essentially, and apparently stole it. I don't know how true that is. That's what some people say.
So cheeky.
Which is a bit naughty. There's also other stories about some other people writing it, but it's all a bit confusing. And ultimately, the general agreed situation is that this guy, Anselm Douglas, created Who Let the Dogs Out with a song called Doggy. So if he wrote it, he must know what it means. This is a quote from Anselm saying what he thinks it's all about. Yeah? So he's saying it's a man-bashing song. He's claiming it's a feminist anthem. The lyric of the song says, the party was nice, the party was pumping. And he's being metaphorical there. It's not an actual party. It's just, in general, it was all pumping, it was all fine. Yippee-i-o, that's everyone happy. Yeah? And everyone was having a ball. Life was going absolutely great. Until the men start the name calling and then the girls respond to the call. So basically the men started calling the women skank and skettle. Every dirty word you can think of. And the men started the name calling, and then the girls respond to the call. These are all lyrics we've heard already. And then a woman shouts out, who let the dogs out? And we start calling men dogs. It was really a man-bashing song.
I love it so much. That's so good. Like, everyone's just having a great time, and then some assholes decide to take it upon themselves to make people have a shit time instead.
Yeah. That's literally what he's saying it's all about. Which makes you sort of think of it in a completely different light, if we're being honest. Because when I think of Who Let the Dogs Out, I think of like this sort of trashy early noughties song that was overplayed everywhere.
I think of being about 10 at like school discos. I definitely remember thinking it was about literal dogs, especially because we had a dog at the time and there was like some concern to not let the dog out.
That's true. Rachel let the dog out. They ran on the road.
So Anselm Douglas wrote this song, and it was originally covered by Fat Jack and his Pack of Pets. So it wasn't originally covered by the Baha Men. It was covered by this guy. This is Jonathan King. He was a music producer in the 70s and 80s, notable for producing Genesis. And he found a cassette of Doggy in the Hairdressers. The story goes that there's this hairdressers in London where all of the pop stars got their hair cut. And in this hairdresser's, there was this big like cabinet full of people who'd left their mixtapes and left their demos and all those sorts of things. And producers and things would go into this hairdresser's and look for all of these old cassette tapes to try and find the next big thing.
That sounds lovely. But this guy's a little thief, but that's really cool as a cultural.
Yeah, exactly. You hear about like the French salons or like the
exactly, the
like,
reading rooms and things.
So rather than Jonathan King, the lovely bit of gammon here,
yeah, exactly, feminist icon, I'm sure.
Right.
finding someone to record it for him, he decided to record it himself under the pseudonym Fat Jack and His Pack of Pets. I mean, it's incredible because it's on the internet. You can find it anywhere. It's on Spotify, it's on YouTube, and he does a racist Caribbean accent throughout the entire thing. Yeah. So he doesn't come across as a particularly nice man. So we move on to the Baha Men, the famous Baha Men who recorded Who Let the Dogs Out. It was Fat Jack and His Pack of Pets. That version of Who Let the Dogs Out was found by Steve Greenberg. Steve Greenberg was a friend of Fat Jack and His Pack of Pets. And he had heard this song and he thought, oh, this is great. I need to get this band, which I'm managing, called the Baha Men, to record this. He was like, this is a great song. The Baha Men were originally High Voltage, and he made them change their name to the Baha Men. And their first hit was Dancing in the Moonlight, it was a cover of Dancing in the Moonlight. When I think of Dancing in the Moonlight, I think of that, the really sort of rubbish one from the early noughties, but quite a few people have covered it, including the Baha Men. And by hit, it wasn't particularly like popular, but it was popular enough for them to keep their record deal, basically. In 1999, he convinced the Baha Men to eventually record Who Let the Dogs Out. And this is how the Baha Men would describe deciding to record Who Let the Dogs Out. This is from Dyson Knight. He is one of the many Baha Men. And he says, the manager of the Baha Men at the time heard a version of the song from Europe. This is Fat Jack and His Pack of Pets. He called Isaiah, who's one of the other Baha Men, and told him it was an absolute must that the Baha Men record that song because they had the vibe to make it a huge hit. Isaiah heard the song and was like, there's no way in hell we're recording that song. Management had the vision and the Baha Men were reluctant, but the group went and recorded it anyway. So they weren't particularly fond of recording this song.
They got bullied into doing this by management who had the vision, which is to say, who made them.
It's literally the only thing that they're famous for. It's this song that they didn't want to do.
So how many Baha Men are there? You said one of many.
So there's 9. There are 9 Baha Men.
Wow. I had no idea there were so many.
Yeah. Yes, that's why it's men and not Baha Man.
Makes sense.
So they ended up recording it. How well did it do? You may be thinking, oh, it must have done amazingly well. Well, it did okay. In Australasia and New Zealand, it hit number 1. In the EU, it hit sort of in the top 10 in most countries. This isn't a sort of full list of all of the people or all of the countries that it charted on, just a sort of select few. And you can see in the US, which is really bizarre, it didn't do very well at all. It did okay in the Hot Dance single sales, at number 6. But in the US mainstream top 40 and the US Billboard Hot 100, it only got 18 and 40.
No taste.
Yeah. Well, you may be wondering what is the mainstream top 40 and what is the US Billboard Top 100? Because they're both from Billboard. Well, this is the difference between the mainstream top 40 and the Billboard Hot 100. In the mainstream top 40, songs on the chart are ranked by the total number of spins detected per week. Songs which gain plays or remain flat from the previous week receive a bullet. I don't know what a bullet is. I couldn't find out what a bullet is. I tried.
What? They just, in the post, they just get a bullet.
They just get a bullet. The song also receives a bullet if its percentage loss in plays does not exceed the percentage of the monitored station downtime for the format. If two songs are tied in total plays, the song with the larger increase in plays is placed first. Okay, does that make sense? Is that all clear?
Do they prefer those on the up and up?
Well, the Billboard Hot 100 is most sales.
So the mainstream top 40 is very much like the algorithm of its day.
Yeah. The mainstream top 40 is basically how it's been played on the radio, and the Billboard Hot 100 is most sales. But you can tell the top 40 is the best because it's the total number of spins detected per week.
It's also a smaller like group to be in, so it's still like great.
Yeah.
More elite.
Yeah.
Well, why was Who Let the Dogs Out so popular then? Because it didn't do very well on the charts. There are a couple of theories for this. One of them is sports. In sports stadiums, there's often quite a lot of downtime, particularly with American sports. So baseball, American football, there's often quite a lot of downtime where like someone's coming up to the batting area or there's constant stopping and starting in American football. And during those periods, you basically got to fill some time in a stadium. Otherwise, it's a bit dull.
The
Yeah. Things like that, yeah. And basically, the theory goes that because it had such a sort of catchy, sort of singable riff, which didn't last for very long, but lasted long enough for someone to go up to the bat or for something to change on the American football field, it was played during those periods, particularly in sports teams which were named after like dogs, like the Bulldogs or something. So that's one theory. Another theory is because it was in the film Rugrats in Paris.
I believe this one.
I don't know, like, which little cultural trail is better, from Canadian jingle writer through Trinidadian songwriter through, like, this hairdresser in London through, like, through to Rugrats or through to American football. Like, which cultural milieu is
Well, it's amazing, really. So Rugrats in Paris has a scene which it has in, and the theory is that kids really like the song from the movie, and therefore that's why it was so popular, because kids were constantly playing it because it was in the movie, because they liked the movie. That's one theory. Another theory, this comes from a guy called Ben Sisto. Ben Sisto is considered the leading world expert on the Baha Men.
Whoa.
He's like done documentaries and all sorts of things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He was interviewed by Mental Floss, basically saying Baha Men's version opens a cappella. The vocals have a gravity that stops everything else in the room. Before having the time to consider what Who Let the Dogs Out even means, the listener is transported to a world of pop, junkanoo and barking that's both catchy and annoying. Head bopping and soul screaming. It also seems people can't decide on exactly what the non-question means. What does it want from us? It's as if the uncertainty principle itself was a pop song. In a way, I think that confusion hooks people. It sounds like Doritos' taste. Unnatural, but undeniable.
Is this man a genius?
This is such an amazing quote, because I've never described anything as like Doritos' taste.
Doritos are undeniable.
And they are unnatural. But we all know, as we have discovered already today, that it is a man-bashing song. As said from the man himself, Anselm Douglas. Who Let the Dogs Out is a feminist masterpiece. Would you like to hear some trivia about Who Let the Dogs Out? Just before we go,
Please.
you want to hear some trivia about Who Let the Dogs Out? Here's 3 bits of trivia. In 2015, when asked about the song's appeal, Rick Carey of the Baha Men gave this explanation. People are just really into their dogs.
They didn't know that it was a feminist anthem, even when they were singing it. They didn't understand.
It won Favourite Song at the 2001 Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Award, and in the following year, the Baha Men won for Favourite Band. Bearing in mind that this song came out in the year 2000, so it has an appeal that's lasted 2 years.
It's had an appeal that's lasted 20 years. I'm listening to it right after this.
I'm listening to I'm gonna try and find that Canadian jingle writer.
Well, finally, Rick Carey is the only member of the 9-piece Baha Men. He's the only Baha man to not own a dog. He's only owned cats.
Tragic.
Cats are chill, to be fair.
Anyway, that is the end of my lecture, if you describe it as that, on the Baha Men.
Thank you very much.
I love that. Thank you so much.
He seems to have made a tidy living out of it, to be honest. Which you,
great.
to be fair, you probably would be. If you make a song that is so sort of ever present in the culture, you'd expect to make a little bit of money off that.
Ideal.
Mm.